So we're very pleased to welcome you back to the Rock Behind the Roll after a slight hiatus. Lockdown 2.0, wasn't it, Mum?
Yeah.
Didn't see you for a while, did I?
I was thinking of hiatus. I always thought it was a bit like a hernia. Is that because you get a hiatus hernia? Sorry to go completely off track.
Mum, this isn't our medical podcast. This
Yes.
is the one about you. That's later.
Yes.
A hiatus, no. I hope it's correct English. I think it's like taking a small break. And it
Yeah.
also sounds a lot like a Toyota van as well.
Okay.
But there you go. But anyway, we're very pleased to be back. And we have been trying to get this done for a while. But unfortunately, there's just been quite a lot going on of late. You all right, Mum?
Yeah, there's a spider up there.
Okay, don't worry about the spider. So what we're going to do is we finished with Life on the Farm, and now we've had a couple of questions come up, but also one question what I've been asked quite a few times by different people. So we're just going to put a couple of these questions to Mum on the spot, and she's going to freestyle her answers out, and hopefully what she tells us is going to be very entertaining. So the first one is from Barry. Barry is from Richmond, and Barry's asked a question basically about Ronnie coming out of Richmond and all the local hangouts there, what he's familiar with, and he's heard some local stories. So he's just asked if there's a bit more on that, Mum. So can you answer, Barry?
Yeah, well, the reason Ronnie started off in Richmond was because I lived there with my first husband.
We'll come on to that.
Yes, exactly, who we'll mention later. And we met at the Barber Centre in Wardour Street, which is run by Townsend, and we were all friends at the time. So it was at one of those meetings that I met Ronnie and Susie.
His wife.
And it was his wife, yes. And we got to know each other really well, but it actually started when Ronnie left at the same time as me and Susie at Wardour Street, and our cars were parked next to each other.
Right.
They'd got a nice little Volkswagen, and we got an old Ford Pop.
A what? A Ford what?
It's called a Ford Pop, a Ford Popular.
Oh.
About 1950s or something.
Yeah.
Somewhere round about there.
Sweet old girl.
Yeah. And actually, just for a little bit more name dropping, we got it off Jane Asher for 14 quid.
Bargain.
Absolute bargain. Anyway, Michael, God love him, is an absolutely hopeless driver.
Who is your husband?
First hubby, Michael. So they were going to come back to our place. So we jumped in motors, and Mike said, well, follow me. And he got into the full pop and put his foot down in reverse and pretty much wrote off the Volks.
Hey, it's not often a Ford writes off a Volkswagen, I tell you.
Unless we got Michael driving. So awkwardness turned into, you'll have to come back to our place now because you actually haven't got a motor. You're not going anywhere, mate. So they did, and it was the beginning of a fantastic friendship. And moving on down the line, Townsend then, actually I think he already had moved to Richmond, opposite Eel Pie Island. So it was just Duck's Walk in between Willoughby and Pete's house, which was the Embankment. And Ronnie and Susie stayed with us quite a long time. And then they wanted to get a place in Richmond, so they bought they rented Heatherdean Mansions, which is literally across the road. They lived there. When me and Ronnie, wait a minute, yeah, they were in Heatherdean Mansions, but I'd moved to Wales. And Ronnie and Susie had come to Wales a few times to visit. And it was on one of those visits that, after the American tour, that Ronnie wanted to go to Ireland for a break, which I think we've touched on before.
Yeah, which this will probably lead into the other question. This is how
it leads into
what we've been asked a lot. So there you go. There's some that'll working quite nicely.
We came back from Ireland. The shit hit the fan, because obviously we sort of discovered that we felt a lot more for each other than friends. In fact, it hit us like a sledgehammer, because I'd never been ever in the relationship. We'd always been mates, the four of us. So I could probably link the two questions together, because going from question number one, which was
about
Ronnie's
Richmond.
hangouts in Richmond related, well, basically, I don't think he had I don't think anybody really had a watering hole in Richmond. I don't think we all went to the pub anywhere there. In fact, we didn't.
No.
It's more like if you went out, it was clubbing to tramps or something.
Yeah. But also, what about when you were in London working, when you were working in the bars?
That was way before.
Was that way before, was it? So what I was going to say, how old were you then when this was happening? When you and
When
Susie and Michael
this
and
was
Ronnie?
happening, I was 19.
Okay. And you say like way before, because 19's a really old age one.
Yes, I was 19 because I got married to Michael
Yeah.
when I was 18, because we got married in Hyde Park.
Nice.
And that caused a bit of a fuss. But, yes, so where are we now?
So then we'll just jump forwards a bit.
We'll jump forwards.
So you and Ronnie actually realising it's a bit more
Yes.
than mates, and then but you
Yes.
both still got your spouses.
That's right.
You know, slight
So,
complications.
yes, it was pretty awful, because having, still got feelings for the spouses, plus the fact there's a foursome, we were close friends.
Yeah.
Susie took it a lot better than Michael, because Michael was utterly devastated. And Susie was more pragmatic, I think. I mean, Susie did stay friends.
That's good.
And after a period of 5 years, Michael decided that I probably wasn't dead, because he'd actually told all our mutual friends I was dead. Which is some way of saying she's out of my life, she's out of life altogether.
That's just the difference between men and women. That's what we do.
But now I'm pleased to say that we're mates.
Yeah, and we know, because obviously, Mike, we love you, obviously, when we get to see you.
Well,
so
he's grand, and he won't mind me taking the piss out of his driving, because quite frankly, he ought to be proud of it. It's so bad.
Well, Sis has got to
In
get
fact,
it from
ridiculously, quite recently, in fact, the last time I saw him, the Who had let him drive this top-of-the-range, what was it, a Bentley or a Rolls?
Didn't he pull up at Lada's house in it not too long ago?
Absolutely, all singing, all dancing, made incredibly ludicrously expensive piece of car. And it was either a Rolls or a Bentley, it was one of those. And they trusted him to drive all the way from his place up to Wales and back, and sort of go take the family out sightseeing. You know, how fab is that? And when I mentioned to him that they, that was he all right with this, did he feel the need to perhaps get a co-driver or whatever? He said, well, it drives itself. So, to be honest, it must have done, because he managed to get it back in one piece.
Yeah.
But there you go. That's an interesting story about if you're a crap driver, don't give up hope of a Bentley.
Yeah.
It will be somebody else's.
So, so back with, so obviously the spouses are aware, and you said how they dealt with it. So then while on a roll, so from there it just, obviously you and Ronnie were an item then, and then things just obviously pursued into all the fun stuff we've been hearing about.
In terms of where we lived, because your man from Richmond, which I think is Barry, is it?
Yes, Barry, who asked the question about
Barry,
Richmond.
Well done, mate. But we did stay at the Wig, because Ronnie Wood and Ronnie had bought the Wig together, because Ronnie, little Ronnie,
our Ronnie,
wanted our Ronnie.
Yeah.
He wanted the gardener's cottage, and Big Ronnie wanted the big house.
Yeah.
So it worked out really well that little Ronnie would be in the gardener's cottage.
Little Ronnie in a little house, big Ronnie in the big house.
Exactly.
Very fitting.
Bigger Ronnie in the big house.
That's good. Yeah.
And that was all grand. But this has happened prior to the fact that we went and run off together. But what happened was that we still had the Wick cottage.
Yeah.
Ronnie hadn't done anything with that. It had basically, it had work in progress. It had been while he was away in America. It was a good time to have all the work done to it, to sort of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, refurbish and all the rest. And so he got it as he wanted it for what was going to be him and Susie.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
But
when we moved there, but we sort of camped out in it for about 3 months, I think, altogether, because we'd bought a place in Wales then. And so we camped out in it mainly because I was pregnant and I was having Luke at in St John's Wood, because Ronnie wanted it all private and whatever. And so for about a period of 3 months, we stayed there. And there was an incident.
an incident.
Why the Wick remains a memory
Yeah.
is that just Ronnie was due to go down to Wales to go and oversee the the alterations to the farmhouse in Wales.
Yeah.
And of course the cottage, Wick Cottage, was just basically all sorted. But I mean, we'd only moved in regarding a baby child, a few baskets, and
You and your bloody baskets, I tell you.
oh, I've always had baskets.
I come home from the hospital in a basket,
You
didn't I?
did, yes.
Mm,
You did.
right. Carry on.
Nice, wasn't it? But yeah, so it hadn't got curtains up, and it hadn't got, you know, it got a sofa and a couple of chairs. It's just sort of passing through, really, because it was eventually going to be for Susie. So that was Charlie turning off the phone that didn't work. So then what happened? That was it. He had to go down to Wales, and the night before, we went down the local pub, Star and Garter, and put on a bit of a boogie.
Yeah.
Again, dancing on tables.
Standard.
With the can-can.
Yeah. Trademark.
And so Ronnie goes the following day in the morning. This is the phone driving him nuts. Bastard phone. So, God, this is hard to concentrate. So,
Sorry, I've just launched something in your room. Carry on. Whoever was ringing then, sorry.
yeah, you're not ringing again.
You might ring again. Yeah.
You couldn't shut them up either, could
No,
you?
they were hanging in there. Christ.
Right. So,
Barrier.
so there we are at the Star and Garter,
Yeah.
and doing this biggie, and then the next day Ronnie goes off to Wales, and I'm on my own with the kids, no problem. And that night, I don't know, it must have been about 6 or 7, 8 maybe, because it was dark. And I heard this screaming, like a banshee screaming that was going round and round the house on the outside.
Yeah.
And I thought, what the hell is this? No. And I got Molly, the other station, with me, and she was going mental and throwing herself against the French windows, and had the awful blood-curdling growl. And I thought,
Yeah.
oh my God, there's something out there. And the kids, both the kids are upstairs in bed. And I thought, well, I'm not letting the dog out, because when I decided not to let the dog out, it was because I could hear slashing sounds and banging sounds.
Oh, really?
And somebody yelling.
Yeah.
But the slashing sounds were a bit worrying, because obviously somebody out there had a weapon, a knife or something. So I thought, right, dog's not going out. Dog is going to go upstairs and stay with the kids.
Yeah.
And all the lights were on in the house, because they were on these sort of dimmer switches.
Yeah.
But the thing is that there was so much glass in the house and no windows and no curtains or anything that I knew whoever it was could see me
Yeah.
wherever I was going.
Yeah.
So I couldn't avoid, and I also didn't have to the bloody lights, these newfangled things, technology for you. So I cut my losses and went up into the bedroom and got into bed with the kids.
Yeah.
And the dog. But it got worse and worse.
Bloody hell, I didn't know
I
this.
was terrified. And then I realised I couldn't cope anymore. I was so scared that I was shaking so much. It was a wonder the bed wasn't shaking.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, the thing is, what's really frightening me is I don't know who or what it is.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, if I confront it, I can move it on a bit.
Yeah.
I opened the window and leant out and said, would you like a cup of tea? And lo and behold, he took one look at me and scarpered.
Really?
He got a long knife in his mouth and he was hooded.
Yeah.
And wielding something else. But he just looked up, saw me, and I've never seen anything move so fast.
Really? Jeez.
Then he must have triggered the alarm system.
Yeah.
Because all the alarms went off, and then the police were there, and Russ, the roadie, and everybody was there then. But it was a good way to test how which bits that the alarm didn't cover.
Clearly. The alarm went to treat some idiot with a knife in his mouth on your land. Gee, that's quite scary.
It was scary, hellish scary. It's
So,
one of the most scary things I've ever been through.
Yeah.
But the cops were very impressed, except they didn't. They said, well, we're almost tempted to use that experience to possibly advise some other of would-be victims of would-be assassins. Just don't ask them in for a cup of
Pop
tea.
the window and see if they want a brew. Clearly didn't like tea, Mum, did he?
I clearly didn't. And it turned out he was an Afghani. Oh, there you go. They were starting all those years ago, the bastards. That was
Sweeping comment.
that was working at the hotel,
Yeah.
and he knew that Ronnie was away because everybody in the bloody hotel knew that Ronnie was going because we'd done this big
Yeah, PR.
sort of night because he was off for
Yeah.
a while. And the sodding can got me in trouble again.
Jeez.
So
There you go. Well, we heard it here first,
there is
eh?
a lesson.
Yeah. So
that's the relevance of the wick to good old Barry.
the moral.
I'm trying to do two birds with one stone here. Mix and match with Barry and...
Well, I think you've covered it.
Do you reckon I've managed that?
Yeah, I think you have. I think we'll be all right there, Mum.
And thrown in, you know, my spectacular how to deal with assassins. So
Yeah,
that they
and
can put
I
that out.
dealt with the phone.
Well, what have you done with the phone?
It's fine.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we're going to do, we're going to stop there.
Yes, and find the phone.
The plan is next week I'm meeting up with Mum on Christmas Eve because that's our tradition. We always hang out on Christmas Eve, and we're going to do a little Christmas Eve special and drink some wine.
I think we'll have Prosecco for that one.
Oh, do you know what? Let's go all out. Let's have actual champagne, shall we?
Shall we?
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. So that's what we're going to do next. So yeah, so we're moving on from there.
So that was definitely